I grew up in a household where we always had to make ends meet. We didn't have a specific place to go shopping because even food pantries were an option. My mom struggled most of her life to find a babysitter for 4 kids. Some weeks were harder than others. When my older brother finally turned 18, he was approved for a credit card at Walmart. He didn't have the right knowledge of how to use a credit card, but because he worked a part-time job at minimum wage pay, he thought as long as he was paying something, even if it was a small amount, he could buy things, and it was pretty cool. He spoiled us all with little things we could have possibly needed growing up, from like body wash to even the simplest dinners if possible. He paid small payments, but as time went on, he realized he was wasting away from the debt on each card. The payments he was making did not match what he needed to pay back to keep the credit cards at a good rate. It took him almost 2 years, 4 raises, and 3 promotions at the same job to pay lenders back for our hard times. He's now 24 years old and schools still give him a hard time because of his credit history. If there's any advice I could give, it would be live in the moment you're in. Live within your budget. Do not spend more than needed. Some things can be more important than others, but unless it's needed, do not waste your money. And if it's easier, pay with cash at the moment. Pay with cash. Hard times come around, but do not last long. So always try to stay within your budget. At the beginning of this class, I created a budget on the income I bring in, the bills I need to pay, and the expenses I need to survive in regular living. At the end of each month, I only had $45.70 left over. This is the amount I would pay to credit. This is the amount I would use to pay on a credit card balance each month. I took part in a credit card simulation where I had to buy furniture for my new apartment. I ended up wasting $2,752.80 on furniture on my fake credit card. The minimum payment for the amount of $8,257 based on my budget. I couldn't even be able to afford that payment. Even if I could afford that payment, I would be paying for 4 years almost $1,000 in interest, and that's the lowest APR of 18%. Your credit score is important because it can affect your life in many ways. Things you may want to do or even may want to buy in the long run could depend on your credit score. If you ever want to buy yourself a house or even a car, make sure your credit is good. You want to make sure you always have good credit to receive a low APR. Some dealerships and landlords run credit checks, and when you want to rent a car, just rent. Studies show that almost 50% of employees run credit checks just to even be hired. Credit card companies target people who make less income or even people they know will make a full payment on their cards each month. That's how most credit card companies make their money. They try to offer high interest rates, extra fees, and consumers who possibly can't even make a minimum payment on the debts, and it adds up and the companies make their money. A percent of people who experience any kind of credit card debt show that they fall in a type of depression, can be even more stressed, and can maybe even suicide. In an article by the CNBC states it might be that debt leads to worse mental health due to the stress it causes. It may also show that mental health problems are more prone to debt because of their factors such as erratic employment. Your credit score is something important in your life. You're trying to make a difference in yourself. If you use your credit card and spend only what you know you can afford to pay off, your credit score will rise and more companies will offer you APRs and more options for credit cards, and your chances of purchases on a car or a home are much better. Always make sure you try to keep yourself out of a hole of debt. If you learn about banking and all mathematical things, you will use it in real life. You will learn how to keep yourself out of debt. This year in class, I was able to create a budget spreadsheet using an annual income on a dream job. On it, I added up all the bills plus the expensive and subtract the total amount from my total monthly income. That allowed me to see what I can afford. I was able to use 3 different credit cards with all different rates to purchase furniture for an apartment. I was able to see where I would go wrong on each card if I used a different APR and payoff times. I was able to figure out which card was best for me by using interest formulas and comparing them over different periods of times. I also learned what credit cards to choose and what credit cards not to choose, knowing what to spend and what not to spend, and helping myself stay out of debt in case one day in the future you need that line of credit or a good credit score for something you may want. Knowing how to budget and knowing what the outcome may be using mathematical formulas is a very important and is in everyone's best interest to use. Making sure you learn to budget and buy only what you can afford will always live in your financial health life.